final session of this net orientation program. So in this session, we will be discussing about communication research, and the resource person for this session is Professor Sreesanth K. Professor Sreesanth have completed his master's in journalism and mass communication from Bardiyar University and have secured UGC NET in the year 2013 and JRF in 2014. And he is a PhD scholar who have already submitted his thesis to Pondicherry University, and he have a teaching experience of over 2 years. And currently he is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Media Studies of Christu Jayanti College. So I welcome you, sir, to this session and have a wonderful session. And over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Professor Caramel. Okay, so hello all, a very good evening. So hope you are all safe and healthy. So on behalf of the Department of Media Studies, Christu Jayanti, Bangalore, I welcome you all to the last session in this UGC NET orientation program. So myself, Sreesanth, I'm a new faculty in the Department of Media Studies, Christu Jayanti College. So I'm sure that by now you would have started your preparations for UGC NET exam, as you might have received an orientation on how to study, what to study, and also a bit of experience on questions and answers. I hope I am audible to everyone.
Yes,
So,
sir, you're audible.
okay, so in this last session, we'll be looking into the last unit of UGC NET paper 2, which is communication research. So UGC NET paper 1 consists of another unit as research aptitude. So preparing this last unit will actually help you to cover that part also. So apart from this, learning communication research is important as it deals with acquiring knowledge on how to do research in the field of media studies. And as you all know, that research is one of the essential elements that any aspiring teacher or assistant professor should possess actually. So what I've done is like I've organized this session into 3 sections. Like in the first 2 sections, I'll be giving you an outline of the topics in the syllabus, and in the third session, we'll discuss a few questions like MCQ questions. So since most of you are into teaching, it would be interesting if we have a discussion rather than going for question and answer. We'll discuss the question and answer. So I hope this session would be helpful to you. Okay, so before starting communication research, like the moving into the syllabus, we will just get a recap of what we have actually learned throughout this orientation program. So it's like the concept of communication itself. I'll just give a recap. So it's like by now you would have learned all the theories, like you would have like got an idea or a recap of all the theories, which include like hypodermic, psychological, the sociological, the normative theories, and other theories. And and we all know that communication involves the exchange of information, ideas, and attitudes between the source and receiver. So, where several elements go to make up this process, which includes our SMCR, like source, message, channel, receiver, and the feedback, and so on. So the process of communication takes place in a context, and it is intended to produce an effect. And hence, the domain of communication research is the study of these various elements and their interaction in the process. So with this basic understanding, we will move on to the research, like communication research unit. So the syllabus I've divided into 3 and 3. So the first section, we discuss the 3 chapters. So we have in the first chapter, we have the definition of research and different approaches, process. And in the second, we have research design, the types, structures, components, types of research. And the third, we will be discussing like research in media studies and media research in India. So to begin with, we all know that research is an attempt to discover something, and we all do this every day. However, the kind of research that we do can be very formal, with only a few or even no specific plans or steps. And it can be formal research also, which follows a highly defined and exacting procedures. It's known as scientific research. However, the lack of exacting procedures does not mean that the informal research or approach is incorrect. And the use of the scientific procedures does not guarantee that all formal research is correct. So the fact is, both the procedures can be good or bad. It depends on the research, how the research is conducted. So the important element for all researchers is to understand that correct method, they like to follow the correct methods and ensure that the best results are results and it meets the objectives. So basically, the three basic questions related to research are what, why, and how, which point towards like creating new knowledge, and the new knowledge should bridge the gap between the existing and the required knowledge, or it helps to solve the problem. And it is done through a structured and sequential method of inquiry, which is directed towards a clear objective. So coming to communication research, most of the definitions on communication research discuss five main components, which include the sender, receiver, context or the environment, medium, and the message. So, as we have discussed, as I told earlier, broadly speaking, communication research examines these components and it asks questions about each of them and seeks to answer those questions. So researchers have defined mass communication research as a systematic study of media content, the forces that shape its creation, how and why people use media, and the impact of media content and media institutions on individuals and society. So it changes with the with the change in trends and practices in the field of communication and media. It keeps changing with technological advancements. So its fusion with traditional media has revolutionized how communication as a process is conceived, perceived, and consumed. So this encompasses a tremendous responsibility for communication researchers to upskill themselves and with the modern technology and be part of the contemporary communication research. So this is one of the challenges posed by changing dynamics in the field of media and communication, that researchers should adopt interdisciplinarity. Like he should be able to study, or he should be able to do research by incorporating other theories, other disciplines also. So to sum up, communication research undertakes the scientific study of communication process, and being a scientific process, it is objective and deterministic. So it is interdisciplinary in nature, as it borrows heavily from in terms of both theory and methods from social and behavioral sciences, which include like psychology, sociology, anthropology, and many more. So in essence, it involves application of social and behavioral science methods to study the communication and issues and problems. So here, what the objectives and deterministic things are like, it actually, the researchers actually study like communicator or the source analysis, the message analysis, channel analysis, audience analysis, and even process and effect. These are the five major areas where communication researchers do research. So coming back to the syllabus, there are two terms in research which are like concept and construct. So the concept expresses an abstract idea formed by generalizing from particulars and summarizing related observations. So for example, a researcher might observe that a speaker who actually becomes restless, or a public speaker actually who becomes restless, starts to sweat or fidget with the piece or pencil, and just before giving a speech. So the researcher might summarize from this observation that this behavior and like observe this behavior and term it as speech anxiety. So so that term becomes a concept. Same way, if for example, at an ordinary level, like the word table is a block that represent a wide variety of observable objects ranging from the plank supported by the block and the piece of furniture. So typically concepts in mass media research include terms such as the effectiveness of an ad, the message, media usage, readability, etc. So concepts are important for at least two reasons. First, they simplify the research process by combining particular characteristics or objects or people into general categories. So, for instance, a researcher might term a certain set of families or people as, for instance, staffies, like technologically advanced families, staffies. So now instead of describing each of the characteristics that make these families unique, the researcher has termed them as staffies, which makes it inclusive and convenient to use. So secondly, the concept simplifies communication among those who have shared understanding of them. For instance, the concept of agenda setting. So, as a media student, we all know agenda setting. What is agenda setting? So we have a common understanding of what it is. That is, the people must share an understanding of a concept for the concept to be useful. That is also there. Now, looking into construct, it is a concept that has three distinct characteristics. So, construct is a concept with the three distinct characteristics. First, it is an idea, like abstract idea, that is usually broken down into dimensions represented by lower level concept. That is, the construct is a combination of concepts. Second, because of its abstraction, a construct usually cannot be observed directly. Third, a construct is usually designed for a specific research purpose. So, for example, the construct termed involvement, it it is used in advertising studies, where advertising involvement is a construct that is defined to see directly, and it includes the concept of attention, interest, and arousal. We all know advertising research. So there, the attention, interest, and arousal are three aspects, like three concepts, which makes the construct involvement. So researchers can observe only its likely or presumed manifestations. Like in some context, involvement means a subject's involvement with the product. In others, it refers to the involvement with the message or even with the medium. So its precise meaning depends on the research context. And it could be stated that in empirical counterpart of a construct or concept, it's called variable. Like you would have like learned about variables in research. Like I'm just brushing it. So in research, variables are like important, and they link the empirical world with the theoretical. So construct and constructs are like variables. Okay. So we'll just move on to the approaches, which is one of the topics in the first chapter itself. So, according to Newman and Blake, there are three distinct approaches to social science research, which are like positivism, interpretivism, and critical studies. So each of these represents a model or a paradigm for research that is an accepted set of theories, procedures, and assumptions about how researchers look at the world. Paradigms are based on axioms or statements that are universally accepted as true. So I'll move on to the positivist paradigm. So we might have learned about positivist paradigm. So it is the oldest or widely used paradigm, like in mass media research also. So it is more into quantification or quantitative research, where the like it involves concepts such as hypothesis creation, testing of hypothesis, quantification of the quantitative data, and the objective measures. So, on the other hand, interpretive research or the interpretive paradigm, it aims at understanding people in everyday natural setting. That is, in their own settings, and to create meaning and interpret the events in their world. So this paradigm is also popular in mass media, and it is gaining popularity. So it started gaining popularity from the 70s and 80s, and it is now gaining visibly after 1990s. So interpretatism is more like qualitative research, where researcher himself is the tool, and he tries to induct or make theories from the data, by field surveys, field research. Okay, the last one is critical background, which draws on analysis models used in humanities, where critical researchers are interested in concepts like the distribution of power in society or the political ideologies. So it is more critical, or it's like criticisms. Okay, before we move on further, I'll just differentiate between this positivist and interpretism. So, positivist, like there are five major differences between these two approaches. That's like first one is like the role of the researcher. So, a positivist researcher strives for objectivity, uh, and is separated from the data, whereas an interpretive researcher is an integral part of the data. So, without active participation of the researcher, no data exists in interpretive research. Whereas, coming to the second concept, like a second one, like research design. In a positivist research design, the study is determined before it begins. So, a researcher designs the whole thing and then only starts to research. Whereas in interpretive research, design evolves during the research. He starts with an idea, then the research design actually slowly evolves because he is studying the people from their own setting. So he shouldn't have any preconceived idea, or any idea about the people. He just should have a research problem, and he or she should start the research, and then slowly the design evolves. And the good thing is, like, it can be adjusted or changed as the research progresses. The third is the research setting. So positivist researcher tries to limit the contaminating or confounding or the variables that actually creates, like, it can be like controlled. The whole positivist research is like more like control settings, where one of the examples is like experimental studies, where he can control the whole variables and he can control the setting also. But in interpretive research, researchers conduct studies in the field or natural setting, as I told earlier, where the researcher tries to capture the flow of events without controlling the extraneous variable or the other variables. So, best example is ethnographic studies. The fourth element is the measurement instruments. So in a positivist research, measurement instruments exist apart from the researcher. That is, these instruments can be used by any other researcher to collect data in researcher's absence. But uh, in interpretive research, the researcher himself or herself is the instrument, and no one other can substitute them. It becomes their study. So this, for this study to be conducted, he or she, the researcher himself is the tool. And the last one is theory building. So the positive research use research to test, support, or reject or accept a theory. It's more deductive, like it's deduced from the data, like it is deduced, like it is like a bottom approach. Whereas the interpretive researcher develops theory as part of the research process, and this is theory is like data driven, and it emerges part of research process, evolving from data as they are collected. That is the inductive process. So put it in simple terms, like assume that positive research is interested, like any one of the positive research is interested in testing the hypothesis that viewing negative political ads increases political cynicism. So what the positive research will do, like the approach of positivism, like who follows positives approach will do is like he will conduct a focus group discussion or interviews to help to develop a questionnaire. Like he will develop a questionnaire that measures cynicism and exposure to what is defined as negative advertising. And a statistical analysis is then conducted to determine if these two items are related, these two variables are related, and if the hypothesis is supported. On the other hand, an interpretive researcher who is interested in the same question might also conduct focus group discussion, but the questions discussed in groups concentrate on how group members interpret a political ad, what meanings they derive from the negative ad, the context of their viewing, what makes them feel cynical towards politics. So the focus group discussion alone stand as the source of data, for analysis. So the interpretive researcher uses induction, like from the data, to try to find commonalities or general themes in participants, like from participants' remarks. So thus both researchers use the same tool, but a method traditionally defined as qualitative, but each use, like the focus group discussion is actually a qualitative research tool. So, but each researcher use it in a different manner. So the point is like now we have like researchers combining both these like quantitative and qualitative approaches. So their idea is like to fully understand the phenomena which they are studying. Okay. So having said that, we'll just move on to the next topic in that chapter itself. It's like it's the research process. So you all know what the research process is and what all the things that the steps that involved in research process. So the first step is like to formulating the research problem, then going for a review of literature or literature survey, and finding a theoretical base, and then developing our hypothesis in the case of quantitative research. And in the case of qualitative research, researchers go for developing research questions, and then preparing the research design, then determining the sample design, like how the sampling is to be done. Then the execution of the data collection process starts. Then after that, the analysis of data is done. Then hypothesis being tested, and then the generalization and interpretation from the testing, like the statistical text that they do in quantitative studies. From that they form generalization and interpretation, and the last step is to prepare the report or the thesis. So this is a research process, or what all are things, the flow chart of the research process, what happens in research. So with that, we come to the end of that first chapter of that this unit, and the second chapter is like on research design and the types and methods of research. So research design is also known as the blueprint of research, where the overall strategy that a researcher chooses to integrate the different components of the study is discussed in a logical manner, which will help to effectively address the research problem. So here the research problem of the study determine the type of research design for a research study. So basically there are four research designs, which are exploratory, descriptive, explanatory, and experimental. So exploratory research design aim to generate basic knowledge about relevant issues associated with a phenomenon. Whereas in exploratory research design, like in exploratory research design, it is like more flexible in nature. That is, we have we can actually like it has the flexibility to like like since it aims to generate basic knowledge, it is flexible in nature. Like researcher can have like flexibility of changing the methods or incorporating many more things into this research, this type of research, which design. A descriptive design, also known as statistical research, provides insight in the research problem by describing the variables. So this is used for like defining, profiling, segmentation, estimating, predicting, examining relationship, and all. So it helps to answer who, what, where, and how. So this is more like statistical methods with which we can actually predict what will happen in the future, like based on quantitative studies. The next one in the list is explanatory research design, which is like which helps to uh, answer why factor about a phenomenon, or it is like causes, like why it happened, why it's so, like those questions are explained using an explanatory research. So here the purpose of the study is to explore a new universe, one that has not been studied earlier. So it helps to gain familiarity in unknown areas. So that is all about explanatory research. And the last one, the fourth one, is experimental design, which is used to test causal relationship under controlled situation. So here some of the variables being studied are manipulated to control the conditions within which the persons are observed. So here, like and what an experiment is. So it's like laboratory-based experiment which is conducted in a social, like in a real world scenario. So like classroom level experiments we can conduct, like with uh, two set of students who are given a set is given some test and the other set is not given. So that is actually an experimental research. A subcategory of experimental research is quasi experimental, which is similar to experimental research. So the only difference in quasi experimental research is either there is no control group, no random selection, no and no active manipulations. So it is similar to experimental research, but it is done in actual setting where we cannot control all these things. Like uh, so that is actually the difference between quasi and experimental. So the basic research designs are exploratory, experimental, explanatory, and descriptive research. Okay. So regarding the structure of a research design, you might be like familiar with, like the four phases are like scientific literature analysis, forming the testing instruments, then conducting the research, analysis of research, and the last one providing the conclusions and recommendations. So the conclusions and recommendations like include the conclusion of theoretical part and the empirical part also, which actually helps in the like helps for future research and future studies. So regarding the components of research design, it consists of a detailed information about the research topic, like what all are included in the research design. So it includes research topic, the objectives, the concept and their operational definitions, the variables, hypothesis, research or the research question, method of data collection, method of data analysis and interpretation, and the time duration of the study and the expenditure involved. So this forms a true blueprint for conducting the research. All the components, like when it is given in a systematic, when it is written in a systematic manner, it becomes a research design. So we'll slowly look into each component, like some of the components which are important. So first one is like the variable. As the name suggests, it's something that varies, and it is also known as the attributes of objects, events, things, and beings. So the main thing is like it can be measured. In research, variables are the characters or conditions that are manipulated, controlled, or observed by the experimenter. For example, like income, education, achievement, effect, recall, positioning of advertisement, like position of advertisement in advertising research. So all these like variables. The basic classification of variables, like variables can be classified into two basic classifications, like dependent and independent variable. A dependent variable is about which the experimenter makes prediction. Like for instance, the credibility of a newscaster or newsreader. So news make like a news channel, for instance. So and an independent variable is the one which is manipulated, measured, and selected by the researcher for the purpose of producing observable changes in dependent variable. So as per the last example of the dependent variable where I told about credibility of newscaster. So for this particular thing, the independent variable might be like camera angles could be an independent variable, where the camera angles, like the variations in camera angles may make, or like it's a prediction, may make the credibility change, or it can vary. So second set of like classification is like discrete and continuous variable. So discrete variable includes only a finite set of values which cannot be divided into subparts. For instance, number of family members or number of players in the team. It cannot be like divided into half or zero point 0.5. Whereas continuous variables can take on any value, including fractions, and it can be broken down into subsections. For instance, the time spent watching television or time spent playing games or time spent on mobile phones. All these are like continuous variables. So the next component which needs to be discussed is hypothesis. So hypothesis is also known as a problem statement, which is a testable statement and that expresses the relationship between two or more variables as we discussed earlier, the variables. So in the case of a qualitative study, I told earlier, like most often research questions are framed in instead of hypothesis. So where the research question is also like similar to hypothesis in a different manner, like where the research question is like a clear, specific, answerable, interconnected and relevant question, which is based on the research problem. So the role of both hypothesis and research question is to provide a direction for a study. So it suggests a testable relationship between two or more variables and it eliminates trial and error research. So hypothesis is always a declarative statement. So here we have two statements which are like hypothesis statements. So the first one is like there is a significant difference between the recall of television commercial for subjects exposed to low frequency broadcasts and that for subjects exposed to high frequency broadcasts. So here there is like it is trying to find a relationship between the two things, like two variables. Same way in the second one also there is a relationship between the two variables being studied. So the thing is like it is a testable statement which can be tested based on the quantitative uh, data. Okay. So okay, moving on to types of hypothesis. There are two major types of hypothesis, which are like okay, sorry. There are basically two types of hypothesis, which is like a null hypothesis, which is actually a negation hypothesis that tend to refuse or deny what is explicitly indicated in a given research hypothesis. So, and an alternate hypothesis, the second category hypothesis, which is like statistical hypothesis. It's also known as statistical hypothesis and is the operational statement of the investigator's research hypothesis. So, I have there are two statements listed here. So the first one is like the level of attention paid to radio commercials is not related to the amount of recall of the commercial. And second one is level of attention paid to radio commercials is positively related to the amount of recall of the commercial. So I want you people to like tell me which one is null hypothesis and which one is alternate hypothesis. I hope okay, I have like you can unmute and tell me which one is null and which one is alternate. Hello. Hello. Is there anybody listening? Yes, yes, Praveen Kumar. Okay, so we have Rebecca. Okay, thank you, Rebecca. So, okay, fine. So, as stated earlier, like the null hypothesis actually is a negation statement. So, the level of attention paid to radio commercials, it is not related to the amount of recall of commercial. It makes sense, like it is negating the statement. And the other one is like there is a positive like significance, or positively related to the amount of recall. So that becomes alternate hypothesis. And we have research hypothesis, uh, which is like okay, which is the prediction derived from the theories and the test, which is like working hypothesis, which the researcher might begin the study with, like his or her idea of, based on the theories and based on his experience, he may start the research with a research hypothesis. Okay. Now, moving on to the types of research, it is basically determined based on the research problem. However, it would not be possible to discuss, like, I don't think we'll be able to discuss all the types of research. So we'll look into some of the basic types of research which are used in communication research. So the first one is like basic research. Uh, the basic research is based on outcome, like what it gives out. Like this type of research is also known as fundamental or pure research, where it makes persistent patient effort to discover something new to enrich human knowledge. And this is it is more related to developing theories by discovering broad generalization and principles. So generally it is done for academic purpose. So we don't find much research, much people doing research on, but there are research like basic research to find out like to give something new or something to back to the academic itself. So the second type is applied research, which is also outcome-based research, which aims at improving a theory. So uh, it is like testing of theoretical concept in specific problem or situation, where its concern is generally with the solution for problems. Like it is like problem based, where for instance finding a vaccine, for instance for the like COVID vaccine, it becomes an applied research because it uh, it it is based on a problem and it is problem solving, like it intends to solve the problem. Okay, the third type which is mentioned in, like which is in our syllabus, is like descriptive research, like which is, it is based on purpose. Like what is the purpose? Like it's also known as ex post facto research. So it is fact finding inquiry, and the field service or the field research is the main like contents of research. Like when you design a descriptive research, the field service make, like it is the main element. So the purpose of research design, descriptive research, is the description of state of affairs as it exists at present, where the researcher has no control over the variables. So here the researcher has to report what has happened or what is happening. So the basic methods used are field service, comparative and correlational methods. So for instance, examples are like preference of people on for preference of people on availing some particular kind of service or particular thing, or even the frequency of shopping becomes descriptive research. Next one is analytical research, which is also purpose based. Here, the researcher uses facts or information which are already available and analyze these to make critical evaluation of the material. So it involves critical evaluation and thorough analysis of available data. So here, the why and how of any phenomenon is the why and how of a phenomenon, which makes it descriptive research. Like descriptive research is uh, the why and how of a phenomenon is analytical research. So the why and how of a descriptive research makes the research analytical research, where the causal relationship is studied, like why it happened and how it happened, the cause and effect kind of relationship. So moving further, the historical research utilizes historical sources, documents, remains, etc., to study events that have occurred in the past, including the philosophy or persons or a group at a remote point of time, like which happened earlier. So the variable focus of this kind of research is like time. And coming to case study, this enables a researcher to gain an in-depth understanding of a certain object or defined group of objects. So we'll be talking about case studies maybe later also. Like case studies or case can be like either single or multiple, or similar or diverse cases, or like can be studied. So the main idea is to get a detailed or deep understanding of the phenomenon, and it will help the researcher to make a specific interpretation of the phenomenon in particular context. So the thing is like it has an unrestricted framework which actually enables the researcher to use any of these choice of suitable methods of analysis also. So coming to the seventh type, it's the longitudinal study. Here, the researcher explore and explain the change and development over a period of time. It could be like years and decades. So this type of research includes the studies conducted over a period of time to understand the factors influencing or the consequences of the changes in a phenomenon. So when we discuss longitudinal study, it is important to know what cross-sectional studies are. So cross-sectional studies enable the researcher to study a phenomena thoroughly in different areas of culture and society at a certain point of time. There in longitudinal, it is studied over a period of time. Here, in a particular period of time, a particular phenomena is studied in different like areas or culture or society. So the focus of cross-sectional study is not primarily temporal change, but the qualities, features, conditions of a phenomena at a chosen point of time. Okay, so now we move on to like communication research, the chapter on communication research in particular, where we'll discuss like uh, basically the communication research like in the field of communication we have different set of fields like journalism, we have electronic media, we have cinema studies, we have public relations, we have advertising. So we'll look into some of these research that has happening in each area. So coming to newspaper and magazine research, there are like four basic types of studies. This where studies are conducted on readership, circulation, management, and even website usability, like how people use website. Okay, sorry for that spelling mistake. However, most of these research focus on readership and the studies on circulation and management. So we all know that media is a very sensitive domain as it connects a clear majority of population, and it actively engages them in the delivery of messages. So therefore, media research helps in making decisions with respect to the composition, expression, and analysis of news, views, and information. However, we know that objectivity and accuracy are the like critically important in news reporting. So we all know that in media field we all do research like in one way or the other. So for instance, a good story, a good news story is often an outcome of a good research or investigation. So media research is also used in conducting surveys, public opinions, exit polls, advertising, public relation campaign. So which helps in providing all this research actually helps in providing a perspective to that particular story or particular concept which is being told. So a story always should be well researched before being brought to the public domain. Okay. So why do we need mass media research, or what is the importance of mass media research? The first element is that it helps to verify old facts, and it leads to gaining knowledge and understanding. It helps in generalizing certain phenomena and also helps in decision making, theory building, and even solving problems that are pertaining to field of communication. So communication research has its like importance. So when we look at public relation, we know that it helps to define not only what we know but what we don't. So, and research is the key aspect to any successful public relation work, because it is important to know a customer's need, the target market, available resources, in order to draw up good PR strategy for any phases or campaigns. So, however, research in public relation focus on whole public relation process, and it studies communication relationship among and between organizations and even their key like audience group also. So we have John V. Pavlik, who authored the book Public Relations: What Research Tells Us, and he defines three major types of public relation research, which are like applied, basic, and introspective. So applied PR research aims to make use of research result to gain economic benefits. And it could be like in the form of goods or service or means of institution and management problems or solutions in place. It's like applied research. And the basic research actually adds to the existing body of knowledge and helps to determine and discover the unknown and known development and enhance knowledge in PR. So it is like basic research as we discussed earlier. So, and the last one is introspective research. The PR research looks at the profession and discipline itself. It is like introspecting the PR itself. So it is done by investigating the public relation profession, education, history, the scholarly research, and the elements that underpin public relations field. So looking back at public relation and its need, its way of working, all the things are being studied in introspective public relation research. So another important or interesting area of like communication is like advertising, and research in advertising is interesting. So it is interesting to note that much of the research in advertising is actually applied research. That is, it attempts to solve a specific problem, and it is not concerned with like it is less concerned with theorizing or generalizing the things. So advertising researchers actually want to answer the questions. Questions, for instance, it could be uh, like should a certain product be packaged in a particular color, particular package size, and how people actually look at it, what changes are to be made. All these things becomes the questions for advertising research. So with increased competition, mass markets, and mounting costs, more and more advertisers have come to rely on research as a basic management tool. And the three functional research uh, areas in advertising are like copy research, media research, campaign assessment research, uh, and these are like, you know what copy research is, what advertising copy is. Like it is the message or content in the ad. So researching on that. Like media research is like the medium or the channel, how powerful a channel is, what channel should be used. All those things are research. And the campaign assessment is like where you do the pre-test and post-test method are done like before and after a campaign. It helps to track, or it helps to do a tracking studies which can assess the impact of the campaign by measuring effects at several times during the progress of a campaign. So some of the key concerns in advertising research are like what makes people buy some products and not others. So the competition is major. So why do we prefer some brands over the other? So do print ads and TV commercials actually influence our behavior? So these things are being like are some of the research problems which is developed and done like studied. Okay, so advertising research is actually directed towards answering such questions. And since the question differs from campaign to campaign, so no single strategy or a particular strategy won't work for all the situations. It differs. That is the interesting aspect of research. Actually, each question, each research problem demands a different set of research design in advertising research, like in any research for that matter. So moving on, we have another interesting area in communication studies, that is cinema research. Like communication research, it's cinema research. So the academic study of film has involved looking at generic conventions, authorial features, and the use of function on different aspects of film language, like which include film language, mise en scene, narratives, editing, sound, and many more. So research in cinema studies has also examined the relationship between the film and society. The issues like race and gender, on and off screen construction of stardom, and even the association between the cinema, ideology, and propaganda, and the way in which films mirror and shape in national and transnational identities, how films make identities, like and even the film policy and legislation are studied, and as well as the matter of film reception, distribution, and exhibition, even the venues and audiences. For instance, the new cinema history movement, which is a new ongoing research area where people are like studying on it. For instance, my PhD study explores cinema um, exhibition, where I studied single screen cinema theaters, like cinema exhibition in single screen cinemas, which are now being closed down every there is a closure happening in that particular area. So, however, it must be noted that research questions and methodologies from humanities and social science have often been used in cinema research. So, where it actually tries to analyze multitude of topics, because cinema is linked to many areas, many aspects, many things. Actually, it's linked to the society. So in a similar pattern, we have computer graphics and animation research, research, it has gained research attention, where computer graphics is it's the art and science of communicating information using images, which are generated with the help of computer devices. And computer animation would be considered a subset of this discipline that deals with art and science of images intended to be viewed consecutively. Like it makes animations. For instance, I can just give you a study, like a research problem, using animation as a means of enhancing learning of individuals with special needs, like children with special needs. So it can employ actually document analysis or content analysis, where these animations will be analyzed for to check the ability of animations to comply, or how the needs, special needs, children's needs are met. So there we have this content analysis or document analysis as a tool, which examines the materials related with a certain research topic. So apart from this, we have many more like major areas of communication research, electronic media, for instance, where research in electronic media has been an important management tool for successful electronic media managers. So these research in electronic media actually helps them to know what their target audience wants, what the audience demands are, how and all they can improve their programs. However, some of the basic tools that are employed in electronic media research are the rating and non-rating research tools, which we are all familiar with. We rate it in 5 star, like 3 star. We rate it. So it's like so we have many more now, like internet, the social media practices, magazines, for instance, children's magazine in particular. So the important element is research question or research problem which is being studied. The research approach or the research problem and the research approach defines the research design and methods and tools to conduct the research in all these areas. So the problem, we look at the problem and then we will design the research in these areas, uh, like this electronic media, internet, magazine. So there are much more to be studied actually. So moving on to media research in India, we know that we have more than 1 lakh newspapers and periodicals, and there are more than 17,000 thousand newspapers alone. And India produces the largest number of films. And there are many areas like many things like in media that India produces. We have a huge network of radio broadcasting, which include AM and FM stations. Even we have community radios. So there are like umpteen number of television channels which have come up. And apart from this, India has seen a tremendous rise in the number of users in mobile communication, like mobile users and online media. And with this lockdown due to COVID-19, the online platforms, the social media usage, and even the OTT platforms, which is like over the top platforms, usage have also gone up. So looking at these studies conducted so far, most of the studies conducted so far in India are descriptive in nature. And the methods applied are sample surveys on media audience, their media behaviors, and the opinion on various aspects. And we can see that there is an abundance of content analysis done on media messages. However, experimental research which aims to test theoretical propositions or hypotheses very less in Indian context. Like the studies are very less. So the studies state that much communication research has gone into role of communication in the development process of the national development process. So the studies include diffusion of agriculture innovations, like a diffusion of innovation for that matter, that theory is applied. So problem of rural communication, extension of education, family planning, etc. are being studied. Like, and the studies in these areas have generated a vast amount of research data in communication studies in India. So, as we all know, one of the landmark studies done in Indian communication research is SIT, which is known as Satellite Instructional Television Experiment, which was conducted in 1975. So it assessed the use of technology for instructional purpose. So it was the base for our Doordarshan or television in India. So it is known as one of the largest techno-social experiments ever conducted in human history. So, so with this we end the first part of this session. Like so. We have three more chapters actually in the same communication research syllabus, which is like a very vast syllabus actually. So it is important that you learn or you understand all these concepts in detail, and you have to prepare in detail so that you can actually score more. Like you shouldn't lose any marks on these things. So we have three more chapters in the syllabus which discuss about the measurement methods and tools of data collection, data analysis and interpretation, and the last chapter on ethical aspects of research and writing research report. So we will quickly go through the three chapters and move on to question and answer, where we will discuss a few previous year's questions related to communication research. So measurements or measurement is the method or process of quantification that is expressing the data in numerical values. So by the act of measurement, a researcher actually assigns numerals to objects, events like numerals to objects or the properties according to certain rules. So here the numerals have no implicit like quantitative meaning. So regarding the measurement levels, there are actually four levels of measurement, which are nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. This was proposed by psychologist Stanley Stevens. So, in the case of nominal, numbers or other symbols are used to classify people, object, or characteristics. For instance, the basic example is like numbers on football jersey, where you have a number on the jersey, which is like just a numeral or symbol used to classify people. Like it just classifies or it just denotes somebody. So, in the case of Mass media research, one of the best example would be like classifying respondents according to the medium they depend on most for news, like the medium that they use to gather news. Like those depending on TV might be category one. So those depending most on news on like newspapers would be category two, magazines would be three, and mobile phone would be four. So here we are categorizing. We are categorizing the response based on some particular criteria. So that is nominal level, not nominal scale actually. So in the second one, the ordinal, the objects measured are usually ranked according to some dimension, like such as from the smallest to the largest. So ordinal measurement often has been compared, like it is compared to a horse race without, like it is a text like horse race without um, excuse me, horse race without a stopwatch. So the order in which the horse finishes is relatively easy to determine, but the difficulty is like to calculate the difference in time between the winner and the runner-up. So, however, an ordinal scale possesses the property of equivalence. Like, for example, if a researcher asks the farmer or a person to rank certain brand of things that he or like he or she like personally feels. So, he or she may order, say, an order of preference, like one particular number or order according to their preference. They may order the brands according to their preference. So that is actually ordinal scale. Whereas in the third one, the interval scale, or it's also known as cardinal scale, is when a particular scale has all the properties of an ordinal scale and the intervals between the adjacent points on the scale are of equal value. So the best example would be like the thermometer, where all temperature, the temperature scale, where heat required to warm an object from 30 to 40 is like is almost like similar to 50 to 16. It's like 10. Difference is 10. So interval scales incorporate the formal property of equal difference. That is, numbers are assigned to the position of objects on an interval scale in such a way that one may carry out arithmetic operations like quantitative operations on differences between them. So the issue is like there is no like it lacks a true 0 point. There is no 0 point or condition of nothingness. So, for example, if it is difficult to conceive of a person having zero intelligence or a zero personality, so there is no zero in interval scale. The fourth one is ratio, which indicates the scales which have all the properties of interval and consist of a true 0 point. So this true 0 point or fixed 0 point makes like it gives the ratio scales like a judgment value. Like ratio judgments can be made using this ratio level of measurement. So ratio scales are relatively rare in mass media research. We don't use ratio scale because that kind of quantitative we don't. There may be, but we don't use it generally. So although some variables such as time spent watching a mobile phone or television or number of words per story are ratio measurements. So to sum up the four measurement scales, like measure levels of measurement, the nominal scale are used to name or label series of values. Ordinal scales provide information about the order of choice. The interval scales give the order of values and has the ability to quantify the difference between each one. And finally, ratio scales give us the ultimate order, interval values, plus the ability to calculate ratios since a true zero can be defined. So moving further, it is like before discussing sampling, what sampling is, it is important to know why we need to do scientific research. So you know that one goal of scientific research is to describe the nature of a population, like generalizing a group or a class of subjects or variables, concepts or phenomena. So nature of a population needs to be described. And in some cases, an entire class or group is investigated, as in the study of prime time, like prime time television programs during a particular week or month. So here, the process of examining every member in a population is called as, like, we know that what it is called. It is called as census. We do, like, the government does it every 10 years. So, however, in many situations, we cannot go for a census. Like, entire population cannot be examined due to time and resource constraints. So, and such a study may, in fact, create confusion due to the measurement of large number of people, which often affect measurement quality. So, thus, the usual procedure in these instances is to take a sample from the population. So here we have an image which on to the right shows like A1 is the sample from the population A. That is, A1 is the sample which is also a subset of the population A. In other words, actually we can uh, say that A1 is representative of the entire population A. So here the word representative is important. Moreover, sample that is not representative of the population, even if it is big in size, it is inadequate for testing purpose, because the results cannot be generalized to the population from which the sample was drawn if it is not representative. So there are actually two errors that can happen, and one errors that can happen in research, and one error is like sampling error, which occurs if sample does not form a representative of the population, as I told earlier. Which, if it is not a representative of the population, a sampling error occurs. So how to reduce it? It can be reduced by randomizing the sample selection or increasing the number of observations. So when the observations are increased, it can be reduced. That is, it helps to reduce the sampling error. Like, the error can be reduced. On the other hand, there is one more error, which is non-sampling error, which can occur due to other aspects related to research study, such as the errors in measurement or data analysis and so on. So coming to the types of sampling, there are two basic types of sampling you need to know. That is probability sampling, which actually uses mathematical guidelines whereby each unit chance for selection is known. And this allows researchers to calculate the amount of sampling error present in research study. And the second one is non-probability sampling, which does not follow the mathematical probability. So before, like, to select a sampling procedure, it is important to consider the purpose of the study, the value of the study, or the cost versus value thing, like then the time constraint, how long can this research be done, like how much time will it take, and the amount of acceptable error of the study. So although a non-probability sample has merit in some cases, it is always like the general rule is like to use probability sample, like always use probability sample when a study is conducted to support or refute a significant research question or a hypothesis, and when the results will be generalized to the population. To generalize it to a population, you need to go with probability sample. So the another argument is like, however, it does not always guarantee a representative sample from a population. I'll tell you one instance. So it is possible to randomly select 50 members of a student body at an institution to determine the average number of hours the student watch television during a typical week. And by an extraordinary coincidence, we end up with 50 students. Like, we end up sampling or making a sample of 50 students who do not own a TV set. So such an instance is unlikely but possible, and this underscores the need to replicate or repeat any study to make this, like, the interpretation should not be said like based on that 50 students, but it should be repeated. So going further, probability sampling is like there are different types of probability sampling, and few basic types of probability sampling are simple random sampling, stratified or systematic random sampling, stratified random sampling, and cluster sampling. So simple random sampling is where each subject or each element or event or unit in the population has an equal chance of being selected. So as shown in the figure, the left side, the right side figure, where it is divided into two parts. Like the right side of that the image shows the sample being selected, which is like randomly selected, which is like simple randomly selected based on some mathematical table. They use tables for that. So from that they select the sample where each individual had the chance of being selected. So coming to the systematic random sampling or systematic sampling, here every nth subject or unit or element is selected from a population. For example, to obtain a sample of 5 from a population of 10, as shown in the image, the researcher randomly select a starting point and sampling interval is given. Thus, if like a researcher, as shown in the figure, starts from 2, then the sample will include the 5 subjects or items number like 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So the method, so here these 5 people who are selected is based on systematic random sample. So it is widely used to select subjects from a from lists such as telephone directories or directories of organization or groups. So from that, how we randomly select it. So every n is being selected based on that sampling frame. Okay, next we move on to stratified and cluster sampling. So stratified sample is the approach used to get adequate representation of a subsample. The characteristics of subsample or strata, where we divide the population into strata, are called as segments. It may include like almost any variable. Based on variables, it can be created. It can be like age-wise, gender-wise, religion-wise, income level, or even individuals who listen to specific radio station or read certain magazines. So from that strata, we select samples. So it forms a sample from that strata, which is formed from the population. So population, then subsample, then the sample. In same way, cluster sampling is where population is already divided into subcategories based on some kind of like a geographical location. So, for example, to analyze readership of a magazine, readership habit of people in a particular state like Karnataka. So it would be a time-consuming thing to complicate, and it would be a complicated process to process if individual subjects were randomly selected. So to do that, we apply cluster sampling where the state of Karnataka can be divided into districts, and from that districts we will be selecting samples. So it can be done based on countries or zip code, like the pin code based, or group of people can be selected from each area. So moving on to the next type of sampling, which is like non-probability. Under non-probability sampling, also we have different types of non-probability sampling. So mass media researchers actually like frequently use non-probability sampling because it is like it is also known as convenience samples. So it is collection of readily accessible subjects, elements, or events for study, such as a group of students enrolled in an introductory mass media course or shoppers in a mall, for instance. I am just giving an example. So although available samples can be helpful in collecting exploratory information and may produce useful data in some instances, the samples are problematic here because they contain unknown quantities of error. So another like non-prompt sampling is like purposive sampling. The first one is convenience sample, where we select the people as and when we meet. So the second one is purposive sample work, which includes respondent subjects or elements selected for specific characteristics or qualities, and eliminates those who fail to meet these criteria. So it is deliberately selected, and uh, it is non-random also. So the third one is like quota sampling, and this in this particular sampling procedure, the subjects are selected to meet a predetermined or known percentage. For instance, respondents above a certain age is being selected. That is the quota. So this approach is in this approach we make a like a certain criteria for selection. Like that is the quota. So it may be like a female or male above 50 being selected from a particular population. So next category is in non-probability sampling is snowball sampling, which is most often used in like academic research. This approach is also known as referrals, actually referrals, where a researcher randomly contacts a few qualified respondents and then asks those qualified respondents to refer uh, their known people like friends or relatives or acquaintances who are who may qualify for the research study. So they refer them, and the researcher has to go to them, the referred person, and these referrals are then contacted to determine if they qualify for the research. So in this way, we get a bigger sample where the reference is based on a certain set of criteria which like qualify whoever qualify for that particular research. So with this, we move on to scaling, which is like a scale in research represent a composite measure of a variable. It is based on more than one item actually. So in general, scales are used with complex variables that do not easily lend themselves to like single item or single indicator measurements. So for instance, variables such as age, newspaper circulation, or the number of channels or in the house, like a number of equipments, uh, mobile devices in a house, or can be adequately measured without scaling technique. But variables such as attitude towards say news channel, news TV news, or gratification received from like going to a cinema theater. So these variables requires the use of scales. So scaling techniques are divided broadly into two broad categories, which are like comparative and non-comparative. In comparative scaling, the respondent is asked to compare particular aspect against another. And in non-comparative scaling, respondent need to evaluate a single aspect. So a non-comparative scaling is frequently referred as monadic scaling, or it's a single unit scaling, and it is more widely used type of scaling in like marketing research studies. So some of the comparative scaling are like paired comparison, constant, some rank order, and in the case of non-comparative scaling, they are further classified as like a continuous rating scaling and itemized rating scaling. So in itemized rating scaling, are where items are for instance, Likert scale, where you have items such as like agree, strongly agree, disagree. You might have seen. So all those things, that is an itemized scale, where respondent is given either numbers or brief description about uh, the associated with description associated with each point on the scale. Uh, so. So once these scales are fixed, the important thing is to check the reliability and validity of the scale. So that is using any scale without preliminary testing, or there should be a test where researcher conducts a pilot study before he does the main study. And with that pilot study, he will be testing the scales for reliability and validity to use it in his main study. So reliability is similar to like a reliable, the word meaning reliability, reliable. for example, a person who is dependable, who is stable or consistent over time, it shouldn't give different values in different like different measurements. Like it should be the same. Like from one session to another, they should be reliable and can be believed to some degree. So in addition to being reliable, the measurement scale should be valid. Like it should measure what it is supposed to measure and satisfy the objectives. So there are different types of validity also, like phase validity, predictive validity, concurrent validity, construct validity. So this is an entire area where you can actually, there are plenty of things to be studied. This quantitative or even that qualitative research, data analysis and data collection. So moving on to the data collection, or which is like in that process we have this step of data collection after we design and the methodology and research design is done. So every researcher needs data to substantiate and propagate the claims made. So for this, he use like there are primarily like two different kinds of data, which is like secondary data, which is referred as published data, and we have primary data, or the data which involves the data collected from target respondents. That is their opinion or experience or attitude towards the subject. So all these are like primary data which is collected from the respondents. So looking into primary data collection, it can be further divided into two groups, like quantitative, like which gives it how many, how often, all those the quantitative measurements are being like received, and qualitative is data is which is based on non-random sampling methods, and it and use non-quantifiable data such as words, feelings, emotions. All these are non-quantifiable. So that is actually qualitative data in under primary data. So moving on to the methods and tools of data collection. So we'll look into some of basic methods. Among them, the basic method is interviews, which involves conducting intensive, like individual interviews with small number of people or respondents, which actually explores their perspectives and on a particular idea or program or situation. So there are basically three types of interviews, which you all might be knowing, like structured, unstructured, and semi-structured. Uh, so I'll just skip that. Okay, moving on to, we have second method is surveys. So here the researcher attempts questioning individuals on a topic or topics and then describing their responses. So there are like two major types of surveys: descriptive and analytical. So descriptive attempts to describe or document current situation or attitudes. That is to explain what exists at the moment. On the other hand, analytical survey attempts to describe and explain why a situation exists. So in this approach, two or more variables are usually examined to investigate research question or test research hypothesis. Thus, in a survey method, a researcher pursues two main purposes, like uh, describing certain aspects or characteristics of a population, or testing hypotheses about nature of relationship within a population. So in survey also there are like two types of questions being done. It's like open-ended and closed-ended surveys. In open-ended, the respondent has to generate their own answers. So in a closed-ended, there are answers being marked like your MCQ, or like there are options to be like they have to like put the option whichever they feel is apt according to them. That is closed-ended questions. So moving on, in the case of case studies, as we discussed earlier, like a researcher uses as many data as possible to systematically investigate a particular phenomenon or group of individual or an event. So case studies are conducted when a researcher need to understand or explain a phenomenon. So it is basically used in like frequently used in anthropology, clinical psychology, management science, and even in history. So the four essential characteristics of case study research are that the case study focus on a particular situation event, program, or phenomenon. So it making it a good method for studying practical real life problems. Second aspect is that the final product of a case study is a detailed description of the topic under study. Third is that a case study helps people to understand what being studied and give new interpretation, new perspectives, and new meanings of that particular case. And fourth is that most case studies depend on inductive reasoning. It's like more giving new interpretations, and from the data, the interpretations are received. So many case studies attempt to discover new relationship than rather than verifying existing hypotheses. Thus, case study is most valuable when the researcher wants to obtain a wealth of information about the research topic, as case studies provide tremendous detail about that phenomenon which is being studied. So one more thing which we have to look into is like obtrusive and non-obtrusive techniques, which can be also termed as covert and overt uh, research method. So in unobtrusive data collection, subjects are being studied. The subjects being studied are not aware of the fact that they are being studied. So therefore, the process of data collection does not affect their response or behavior. So the main types of unobtrusive data are indirect measures like participant observation, where the researcher himself will be a part of the program, the phenomenon, and he'll observe what is happening. And then content analysis and also secondary analysis of data. So it is also known as covert observation, but it is problematic. We'll come to that. On the other hand, obtrusive technique, in an obtrusive technique, the subjects are aware of the fact that they are being studied, which can actually influence their response or behavior. But like the examples are like data collection method, like in which methods like interviews or questionnaires or survey. In these things, it is obtrusive. The researcher, person being researched knows that he is being researched. He is being studied by a researcher. Next, we move on to ethnography, which is in fact a special kind of qualitative research method, as first practiced by anthropologists and sociologists. So ethnography is the process in which researchers spend long period of time living with and observing other cultures and natural settings. So here uh, it helps the researcher to understand another way of life as seen from native perspective, because he is in that particular culture or particular setting. So this is more seen among anthropologists or anthropology researchers. So there are two basic types in this. Like it is micro and macro ethnography. Micro is the approach in which uh, uh, most often used by mass communication researchers. So it's the study of smaller unit of analysis, where it is opposite to traditional study of entire cultures, where the macroethnography comes into act. Here, a small unit is being analyzed. So microethnographic approach is one which is most often used by, like as I told, mass communication research. So based on the outcome of ethnography, it can be characterized into two. They are descriptive and critical. Descriptive is more conventional approach, and on the other hand, critical ethnography makes use of critical paradigm, where it discusses the factors such as power and hegemony, and attempts to uncover hidden agendas and unquestioned assumptions. So the goal of critical ethnography, or it is done often to understand or to unearth uh, political and power related issues, and it might involve giving voice to group who are disempowered in society. So there are, regarding the steps of conducting ethnographic research, there are it differs from the normal quantitative studies. Like it differs in the way the research is conducted. So first thing is like defining the problem or phenomenon to be explored. Second is like the choice of the field site where the research will be conducted. Next is to gain an access to that particular setting. So then the researcher determines what behaviors to be observed. So this is a slow process which will take long duration of time. And then he starts his field work where he starts to take notes, and notes in the sense it will be like plenty of notes. Then he starts to analyze the data, which is like part and parcel. It goes along the field work and data analysis. And the final stage, he writes the report, which is the report itself is like a description of the method, and that includes the researcher's personal feelings about the research topic. And this is followed by the evidence and examples that illustrate the main theme of data. So it is a lengthy document itself. So looking at the tools of data collection, there are two tools used in ethnography, so that schedule and questionnaire. So schedule is also known as interview schedule, which refers to a form filled in during personal interview in which both the interviewer and respondents are present. So this method of data collection is also widely used in, and it is very useful in extensive inquiries and can lead to fairly reasonable like results. So population census all over the world is conducted like this. It is conducted in a scheduled manner where an interview schedule or the person is interviewed in person. And the other thing is questionnaire, which is designed to collect data from a large, diverse, and widely scattered group of people. So it is a device securing for securing answers to questions by using a form which the respondents themselves fill in. So this can be actually mailed to the respondent or administered to a group of people at the same time by giving them appropriate form and collecting them later. So the next method or next thing discussed, which is mentioned in the syllabus, is like diary. This is also a method which is used like the ethnographers use, and it is a method as well as a tool. So it is the first person observation of experience that are recorded over a period of time, where the respondent himself writes the diary and the researcher will be analyzing it later. Then we have internet-based tools. Like with the arrival of internet and the new medium, like we have plenty of methods. Like now we are taking the class, or we are delivering I'm delivering a lecture through internet. So in the same way in research, we have online research, which covers a wide, like through online questionnaire or online data collection, we can cover a wide geographical area, and neither the respondent nor researcher need to be in the same spot, which can help the respondent responses which may be more thoughtful and contain more information. So second aspect is that recruiting busy respondents is easier in the case of online research, where the research actually happens at respondents' convenience. So moving on, there are like some specific media specific research methods, which are like exit poll, opinion poll, telephone surveys, and SMS. Like for the which are like very particular to media, where the exit poll is one interesting thing which you all might be knowing. So how does an exit poll happen? Like it is basically a research study, like a survey research, like on the election day, the polling, like which include all the sampling design, questionnaire construction, fieldwork, data analysis, data collection and analysis. So a typical exit poll questionnaire gathers basically three types of data: how the respondent voted, a variety of attitudes held by the voters, such as the issues that were important in determining their vote, and their party affiliation. And the third one is the demographic characteristics of the voter, such as their age, gender, race, and level of education. So this is exit poll, where it is done in during the election process, where the media actually tries to gather information about how and who will win the election. So similar to exit poll, exit surveys are there, where the media actually uh, conduct survey which are used for other purposes, such as surveying a movie goer, like people who come out of the movie theater is being surveyed, and library users or museum visitors. It's exit surveys. And the second one is opinion poll, which actually aims to measure what people say they did or will do, but do not show us what people have actually done. So public poll is a type of survey or inquiry designed to measure the public's views regarding a particular topic or series of topics. So these are something specific to media research. Then we have telephone surveys where researchers use trained interviewers to ask questions to the respondents, and they are done basically from a computer terminal. So here the telephone or a medium is used to do a survey. And the last one is like SMS surveys where it is used to use basically in our general this television entertainment content, where uh, you might be familiar with that. Even the advertising industry is extensively using mobile technology to communicate and collect feedback. So it actually helps to reduce the number of person hours required to contact respondents individually and talk to them over the phone. So all of us might be receiving feedback SMSs on the services that we avail or a product that we buy when we register it or we give a phone number. So it might be a part of some other bigger survey. We just send an SMS and they will send us the link for the other survey. So now that we have discussed data and collection process, we have data analysis also. The syllabus mentions of data analysis, which is quantitative in nature. So the methods used in data analysis in quantitative research follows statistical techniques, which helps to analyze the numerical data. So there are two types actually, like descriptive statistics, which helps to describe the basic feature of type of data in research, and it helps to present the data in a meaningful manner or pattern, and it starts to make sense. And in the other hand, inferential statistics helps to compare the data or variables, and it is used to make predictions about larger population, like generalization. And some of the tests are correlation, cross tabulation, regression, frequency, analysis of variance, and etc. So and it itself is a big branch, and it will require more time to discuss or to study, to take a lecture on that. It will take time, like data analysis. So we'll come to computer mediated research. We have computer software packages uh, exclusively for analyzing data. Like for instance, in quantitative studies, we have SPSS, statistical package for social science, and we have Stata. And in the case of qualitative research, we have NVivo and we have Atlas T, which are popular software packages which actually helps the qualitative researcher to organize, code, and analyze qualitative data. So with this, we just I'll just quickly move on to the last chapter in our unit, which is ethics in research. So moving on to last chapter, ethics is something like most media research involves observation of human beings and asking them questions, analyzing, getting their feedback on the things. So, however, in this probing process, researcher must ensure that a research process does not violate the rights of the participants or the respondents. So, this concern for rights requires a consideration of ethics. So, as media students or media media scholars, we know that the ethics is important in media, because an unethical behavior will have an adverse effect on research participants. So just one experience with an ethically questionable research project may completely alienate a respondent. He may not again come for a study. And moreover, mass communication research depends on continued goodwill and cooperation of respondents. So it is important to stay away from unethical practices. Okay. So now we move on to media research and ethics. So there are issues. There are six main categories of ethical dilemmas or ethical issues that media researchers may face. It's like voluntary participation and informed consent, like who, the participants and their how to inform them. Uh, these things are like basic and it should be followed. And since there is a time constraint, I'll move on to research report. So this is the last stage of research, and it is like essential element of any research process or final end product of a research study. So mostly research work is presented in a written form, and practical utility of any research study depends heavily on the way it is presented. So, preparing a research report, it is not an easy task. But however, it must be added that writing a research report is an art and requires a good deal of knowledge, imagination, experience, and expertise. So, we'll move on to the structure of a research report. We'll just discuss that and finish up. So any research report consists of three parts, which is like beginning, main report, and the appendix part. So the main report is the main part of any, like the thesis. The main content is in the main report. So that main report is divided further into introduction, review of literature, methodology, uh, results, and discussions. So here, this is a five-chapter thesis, a structure of a five-chapter thesis, which may vary from institution to institution, and it may differ from disciplines. The chapters may increase or decrease, but basically, any research report or any research thesis will have these five chapters, where each chapter includes a certain set of things like which we have discussed already. Introduction will start from the overview of the project and the what the project, the research is all about. And review of literature, as we discussed, it discuss about the previous studies and till like the theoretical base, theoretical framework of the study. And methodology, as we discussed, all the research methods, research data, how it is designed, how the data is collected, how the data will be analyzed, all these things comes in methodology. And the results is generally the longest section in the report. In the case of a qualitative research study, as it generates a lot of data. So this section actually tackles the research questions or the hypothesis. The hypothesis being described, or how the based on the statistical test and analysis, the hypothesis is described or interpreted in this chapter. And the last chapter, which is discussion, this includes the summary of research, the theoretical implication, practical implication, and other implication, and even the future studies and the strength of weakness of the present study. So these things would be included in the fifth chapter, and then it follows the references. So the last chapter in our syllabus is plagiarism, which is defined as the practice of taking someone else's work or idea and passing them off as one's own. So you are not supposed to, like, we as academicians, we as researchers, we as media person, we as somebody who is into academics should never do it. Like, we can actually use their idea, use their material, but we have to give due quotes, or we have to cite them. So this happens in two ways. Like, one is accidental plagiarism, which might occur if you run out of time to write an assignment and neglect to put the references in your work. And the second one is deliberate, where you knowingly do it. Like, you knowingly put somebody else's data or somebody else's views as your own without putting their name. So in scholarly definitions, the more technical notion of appropriation and credit are central in plagiarism. That is, plagiarism uh, is the appropriation of other people's material without giving proper credit. So to avoid plagiarism, it is advised not to use someone else's work in your research as it is. So even if it is necessary to be added, it is mandatory to give appropriate credit to the author and his or her idea. So in most cases, the plagiarism occurs due to poor time management, or and other reasons include incomplete note taking or not understanding paraphrasing techniques, and even lack of confidence in writing, and lack of familiarity with referencing also results in plagiarism. So plagiarism is seen very seriously in academics nowadays, and it is and even in India, UGC is framing rules, and there are rules being framed to address plagiarism, and institutions have started implementing software packages which actually detect the percentage of plagiarism or percentage of similarity in the thesis or publication or whatever things you write. So it is actually an academic theft, a form of academic theft, plagiarism. So it is better to avoid it. Okay. So with this, we come to the end of first two sessions of our class, and where we have looked at the syllabus and main topics in brief. So, Caramel, madam, do we have time for the question answer? Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
We have like 5 more minutes.
Yeah, 5 more minutes you can take for question answer session. Yeah.
Okay. So okay, so we'll quickly look into some questions, like basic questions what we have studied till now. Okay. Okay, I hope everyone can read it. So a construct is a combination of, you can put it in share, like chat. Hello. A construct is a combination of, a variable, okay, somebody has given it D, concepts. Okay, so it is concept. Actually, a construct is a concept that has three distinct characteristics. We have discussed it, like that was the first thing we discussed actually. Okay, fine, we'll move on. The case study method is an empirical investigation that uses A, multiple data sources, B, individual data terminals, traditional data sources, single non-reliable sources. C, traditional data sources. Any other answer? A, multiple data sources.
No. Primo. అది మారి
Okay, I'll put the answer. That is multiple data sources. So it's like case study research typically includes multiple data collection techniques that are collected from multiple sources. Okay, the answer is A actually. Okay, this everyone might be able to do, I hope. Okay, a chain of reference to identify respondents for collection of data will result in the sampling method known as
ఆరెంజ్ ಇಲ್ಲ ಬಂಗಾರ అది కన్సు
A, snowball sampling. Okay, that's true. Where first person will be like based on some criteria, they will select first person, then they will again give referrals. That is the give references. Snowball sampling. Okay, this is something related to our statistical thing. Non-parametric tests are generally applied to analyze anyone. Okay, this I'll tell. It is nominal data actually. So non-parametric tests are like sometimes called as distribution free test, and it is uh, more into like our quantitative studies. We will be discussing. We will like you will be studying in that, and it does not assume anything about underlying distribution or okay. Discourse analysis consider all human communication as a that you be like it is a narrative actually. Discourse analysis is research method for studying written or like spoken language in relation to its social context. So discourse analysis aims to understand how language is used in real life situation. It is basically one of the methods actually of in used in mass communication. So this is regarding our post-positivist paradigm, and we had like three paradigms: positivist, interpretivist, and critical. So positivist, we discussed like yes, true quantification. So it is exploring social reality based on the idea that it is observable and like through observation and reason. So it is quantification. Okay, this we haven't discussed. It is data analysis. Okay, I'll skip that. Okay, this is regarding content analysis or document analysis, where the steps are like formulation of research question, defining the universe, then selecting unit of analysis. Okay. In communication research, formative evaluation includes There are like formative evaluation and summative evaluation. Like formative is an ongoing process that allows for feedback to be implemented during a program cycle, and summative is like at the end of the program cycle. So it is need assessment. So this is accuracy of systematic sampling is this is a sampling frame. Okay, I'll end with this. Okay, sampling frame is a list of the items or people forming a population from which a sample is taken. That's how the whole population is actually sampling frame. So systematic sampling is a type of probability sampling where there is an equal chance for samples to be selected. Okay. Okay, with this, I stop my, I end my presentation. Thank you all. Okay.
So thank you, Sreesanth sir. So thank you for this session. This was really an informative session. I know research is a vast topic, so you cannot finish it within this time constraint, but you have tried to divide it into different session and give a brief of all this, like try to cover almost all the area. Hope it will be helpful for our participants to prepare for the exam. So thank you, sir, for the session, and thank you, participants, for your active cooperation throughout this session. And a feedback form is sent to your WhatsApp group. You can fill it and share it with us. So now I request Dr. Juby Thomas, the coordinator of this net orientation program, to propose a vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmel ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. As we come to the end of this week-long training for the aspirants of NET and GRF, on behalf of the management and Center for NET-SET Training, I deem it a proud privilege to place on record the contributions of every noble heart who worked behind the scene. I would like to thank our brilliant and outstanding leader of Christianity family, Reverend Father Jose Kuti, the Secretary of Bodhiniketan Trust and Director of KJC, whose visionary leadership has been the backbone of the institution. A sincere appreciation to our principal, Reverend Dr. Augustine George, without whose encouragement and support this training may not have been possible. A special thank you to Father Lijo for all his financial support, and thank you to Father Som and Father Emmanuel for always being there for us whenever we require. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation and gratitude to all the faculty members from the Department of Media Studies, Professor AB, Professor Anju, Professor Rashid, Dr. Mamada, Professor Hannah, and Professor Sreesanth for sparing your valuable time with us. I'm sure it was not easy for you to work from 9 to 4 and continue the sessions until 6, but you were so generous enough to impart your knowledge without any hesitation. So on behalf of all the participants present here and from the organizing team, we appreciate you for all the efforts that you have taken. Thank you so much. And I am indeed obliged to offer my heartfelt gratitude to my fellow coordinator, Professor Kamal Maria, who have been always been providing all the aid and backing us with all the support whenever it was required. Dear ma'am, it was great working with you in this mission accomplished. Thank you so much, and it was great working with you. Furthermore, we are grateful to Dr. Sonia Angelina, Director, Center for NetSet Training, for her constant guidance and support. And I must mention our deep sense of appreciation and gratitude to our technical team. And they have been there with us even late evenings. Thank you, team, for being with us. And most importantly, I must thank each one of you for your active participation. I think in this week-long training, your enthusiasm to learn was our motivation. And on behalf of the entire Jayantian fraternity, We wish you all good luck for the NET examination, and we are eagerly waiting to hear your results. Do let us know your result. And once again, I thank all the people who were part of this training session. Thank you. And as ma'am mentioned, the feedback form is being shared in the WhatsApp group. You may kindly fill it, and we value your sincere feedback. Also, all the PPTs that were used by all the resource persons have been shared with you in the email. Some of you have already requested it, so we have already sent it. Few were sent through WhatsApp, and few are been already emailed to you. And there will be an examination that is going to take place and we are not going to judge you or evaluate you or anything, but we want to give you a practice test. So it will be done in an online mode. The detailed information will be shared in the WhatsApp group. It is scheduled on Monday, so please do take up the practice test and try to expand your knowledge. Once again, we wish all of you good luck. And if at all you want all the resource persons are right now here with us. If at all anybody want to ask any more clarifications, you can unmute your mic. I think at Sreesanth sir or Kamal ma'am, they can unmute their mic, right? So if at all the resource persons are present now, if at all you want to ask us anything, we are ready to help you. Otherwise, best wishes. Anybody want to ask anything?
Thank you, ma'am. And all the persons who had put their time to organize this session. It was a wonderful session, actually, very informative. Thank you so much for conducting this particular training session for us. Thank you so much.
Sure, sir. You're Praveen Kumar, right? Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm Praveen.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Anybody else? Yes, Rebecca is messaging. Thank you. Charlotte is messaging. Thank you. All right, then it was nice meeting you all. Thank you so much. Good luck. Admin, you can end the meeting.